Good evening, TheoTrade. This is Corey Rosenblum. You're watching the Theo Nightly video for the 24th of March, 2020. And we got a rally. We have a 10% rally. The market itself, at least the S&P futures, we're up about 10%. Nasdaq up 8. That's actually the weakest market of the day, and that's not saying a whole lot, given 8% is the weakest. And the second up is the Russell. Strongest of today was Dow futures, and that's in part because of Boeing and other companies. Boeing itself, on today's session, you can see it right here, moved $20. So $20 times the 7 multiplier on the Dow gives us all those points. It helped the Dow, at least, go above 2,000. I know, it, at least to me, seems like this is a normal day. The Dow is up 2,000, the Dow is up 1,000, the Dow is down 1,000, the Dow is down 2,000, all those sort of things. But here we are. It's just a function of volatility. Now, what we'll talk about in today's session is not just the bounce, but it's the profile levels and how that helped us set the game plan for today's session, for today's trend day, and for today's bullish type of activity. Sure, we were oversold. Sure, we were due for a bounce, but we'll talk about the profile levels that helped us make that decision and structure our intraday trades, or taking profits maybe on some in-out spreads to the downside, or putting on some bull call spreads to capture this profit or any other type of bullish position. Now, what we're looking at, I know this is the S&P. We have Don's gravity spots, which are in play, always in play for the S&P. I'm just showing you how to update these levels. These are from the volume profile. It's essentially a bell curve or a standard distribution. That's a logic, at least. And it's showing you these bars are the volume that's put up in each price level tilted on its side. So if price spends a lot of time, or bars, and volume, and that's what this chart is anyway, that's going to give us a large distribution. The red line is something special. It's called the point of control, or the highest bar on the distribution table. The yellow lines are sort of like the weekly expected moves. Not exactly, because they are not option statistics, but they are volume statistics. So just like a bell curve, just like the weekly expected move, when you're at one extreme, the market has good odds to reverse, go the other way, and that gives us trades for butterflies or in-out spreads or just intraday tactics. For me, this is game planning logic and helps me set up who's in control and which side to trade on the intraday basis, or maybe even a swing basis on bigger perspectives. So last night and in yesterday's session, we were talking about the edge of the profile and the likelihood for a bounce. That has occurred, but we may see additional bounce continuing because markets typically, or price typically, trades from one side of the yellow all the way through the red to the other side. That may not happen because this downtrend still is in motion, but that's a thought process for the moment. And we'll take a look at the others. In the Nasdaq, we call this a high volume node, and you can see how that builds out. We can draw actually a little rectangle here. We'll do that. So combine the rectangle, right, low to high, high to low, low to high, high to low in price, and that creates a high volume node. And what we have above that is what we refer to as the pocket. So a pocket is like an open air pocket. It means there's not a lot of price and volume, which means the price can move very, very quickly on an intraday or swing basis through a pocket. And at the high volume node, we can expect chop, or this concept of range expansion to the downside, range contraction, that's our box or the rectangle, and then possible, planned out at least, range expansion, this case to the upside. Either way, as traders on the intraday or swing basis, we will be watching this Nasdaq 7,600 or maybe even 7,500 level for a pivot point for Wednesday's session. So any further bullish incursion or price action into and above 7,600 opens up the market to move much higher. And of course, the levels would be similar, not the price levels, but the logic at least, for the Dow mini futures and the Russell. Now, this is the market building up through the profile. Is there an example recently where something has done this we can look at and view for the future? Sure, gold. So gold, this is GC, our futures contract. it is on the edge, or it was at least on the edge of the lower profile, yellow line. Again, if this is a new concept to you, it's just called volume profile. It's done for short-term planning, and it uses similar logic to weekly expected moves. Not the same calculation, but if you're on one side of the weekly expected move, you're likely, or the price is likely to come up and go to the other, or if it's at the top, likely to come down and go to the lower. We just have an added area of these high volume nodes and pockets, which means price can move quickly. So the forecast, or the process, or the thought logic recently in gold, I've discussed this last week too, at the edge of the profit or edge of the profile, the trade is to go long, or to trade bullishly in on spreads, calls, or just intraday tactics. That gave rise to a trend day on Monday and a lot of overnight or outside regular market hours activity in today's session, mostly overnight. So that is an example of how to use profile logic, or trading, planning, from one profile extreme, in this case about 1,500 for gold futures, to the other side. And that peaked out today at about 1680 per ounce in gold. Crude oil is similar, at least to stocks, which is trading at the lower bound of the profile at a high volume node right here, and there's a pocket above it. So that's the logic with the bigger picture. If the price, and that is true for a stock as well, is at the edge of the profile, and by the way, this is just simply we'll take off all these other indicators. It's a volume profile. How to get this on your own chart? So type in volume, and you can just go down and see the indicator is just volume profile. You would double click, and that comes up on your chart. I've edited just a little bit in terms of how it looks, made these little bars a little bit bigger, but have not changed any of the default settings. So it's a volume profile chart. Professor Bierman and myself have informational archive sessions, coaching sessions. I know he has at least 2 to 3. I have 3 at least in the TheoTrade archives on this particular indicator and how to use it for game planning. It does work for individual stocks. And just take a quick look at this one. ConocoPhillips had a trend day to the upside and a rotation, or movement, if you will, down or up away from the lower value area extreme to the upper. And if you are trading a specific stock, this is what I do in the S&P. Draw a trend line. So keep that trend line there. You can make it the same color. You can edit it to be a little larger and do whatever you would like to do with the trend line there, just for a reference. So take that into your calculation. You can duplicate, and that will stay on your chart. So we'll just put that one there. Well, actually, we'll duplicate this just to show the concept and how it is done. So from the planning, now these yellow lines will not stay on your chart if you trade or change your time frame. That will not stay. But the yellow lines, right, forget this. We're going to look at that. We look at a 30-minute profile, but the logic would be the same. Right? These bars don't matter. We don't look at those because they do not count. We're looking at a 30-minute profile, and this is how we do the game planning type of logic. So that's going to be if the market is trading down into a lower value area extreme, price pivot, price level, the odds certainly don't guarantee, but neither does weekly expected moves or anything for that matter. But the odds favor a rotation, a push, a trade, a movement, or I call it a price pathway, away from the lower bound, through the middle, and maybe all the way to the top. That is what happened in ConocoPhillips and other stocks like it. So just as we rotate on the rest of the week, all we're looking at for this particular update here at TheoTrade is thinking profiles, is thinking edge of the expected move, which is the same logic, and profiles as well. So again, when the market's at the edge of an expected move, it typically rotates back to the upside, and vice versa. Plenty of examples of how that plays out in the real world. The volume profile logic is the same. It does work on intraday stocks or individual stocks. I would recommend the default setting of 30 minutes with a 10-day look-back period, and just looking at that together, it's a 30-minute aggregation chart, 10 days looking back. Anything outside of that will change the parameters If you are more of a swing trader and not an intraday trader, you might want to take stocks on the hourly profile. But if you're an intraday trader, you might want to take a look at the 30-minute profile. But of course, as always with anything, this is an informational tool. It's used in planning. Work with it yourself. Make it your own. As always, be careful and safe. This is Corey Rosenblum with your Theo Nightly video for March 24th, 2020.